Hi, welcome to Firepower and Firepower Threat Defense. In this section, we're going to cover malware and file policy. Great, pretty simple policy actually, but we'll spend some time building this and then testing it. So in this case here, this is some network analysis I got here this is the analysis from the access control policy rules, right? We can see some block with resets. We can redo this, but we can see this is my my pod 20 host, but we're going to go through this in detail in the network analysis section. What we want to do is to go through the different policies here. So these policies here, we now have to understand: pre-filter, SSL identity, DNS, malware, file policy, and intrusion policy all get configured into the access control policy. And the access control policy is pushed out with all these in tow to the FTD box, or to the Firepower box. And so one main policy. Now there's a hidden policy here called the NAP, network analysis policy, that's not shown here, but that would be my 7th policy that gets configured in the ACP. Remember, there's other policies that aren't in the ACP, like network discovery, application detection, correlation, then we got system and health and so on. But in this case here, what we want to do is understand where I put my file policy when I create it. So the file policy, and you can create as many policies as you want, many IPS policies as you want. And the fact is, I can put a different one on every single rule. So if I want to put one down here at the end, inspect all traffic. So I got to permit IP any down here. And I already have the Cisco IPS policy, and we'll change that. But the way you do is I go into create a rule. It has to be an allow rule. I'm allowing the traffic to be inspected, right? So in this case here, the file policy, I don't have one. This is where I would add it to a rule. So let's just leave this here. And we'll go out to the malware and file policy and go ahead and create it. So here I am, and I'm going to say new file policy. And I could use the same for both devices. Same policy for pod. I have 2 devices in here, right? Eventually we'll get to high availability, they become 1. But not in this section. All right, so the first thing you want to notice here is there's the rules and advanced tab. We're going to go through that first, but you want to notice this: no access control policies use this malware and file policy. Okay, so until we can create stuff all day long, until you put it in ACP, it's not going to do anything. First thing I'm going to do is start with the advanced tab. I wish something was on. I would never have to come out here if Inspect Archives was on by default, but it is not. Very odd. Basically, you have zipped, compressed, archive types files. They're not inspected. We absolutely can open those up and check those for malware or whatever. Now, block encrypted archives. That'd be obviously if they were encrypted and you couldn't read them, you're not doing SSL, right? Decryption. Then I want to just say, no, I'm not going to take any chance. I'm going to block those. Well, on this one here, let's say I want to choose that or not. I'm not going to choose it in this case, because I want to get some encrypted files. But uninspectable archives would be a couple reasons. It has a password on it. So if you have a zip file with a password, you say, yeah, I'm going to block that. No one can come in here and send that kind of shenanigans. The other thing is if it's a type of file it doesn't understand. So I was out at a company, and they had their own custom apps, like a lot of companies do. And I had this on, and they were getting blocked. And so I was like, oh, okay. So because it didn't know what it was, it couldn't inspect it, so it blocked it. So I'm going to leave that. We could also say, if we can read it up to archive depth of 3, compression of 3, right? So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Now, the other things is, first-time file analysis, we're going to send that SHA, even though we know it's probably going to come back as an unknown. We're going to do it anyways. And this right here, guys, let me see. I don't know if I have my objects open. Let me do this. If you have been through objects, if you've been through that section or not, there is something in the objects called the custom detection list and clean list. These are not enabled until we create a file policy and push that out, and this is how they're enabled. So if I come out here and look, and here we go, and come down here to file list, right here. This is my list of SHAs. So I can take a SHA and put it in the clean list and say this could never be convicted. Where I put it in the custom detection list, say you're always convicted. You're a horrible file, you're always going to be blocked, right? And we if you saw that section, we can come in here and actually insert the SHAs in here. Unlike we can't insert anything from here, from this screen into the blacklist here, we can here. But nothing happens with this until we implement the file policy. This, you want to just leave this as disabled. It's not even used. Basically, we were used to be able to choose these, and it had scores. This one was 76 to 100 and so on. This is just going to be done at the AMP cloud itself. So we'll just leave this as just from legacy, right? Okay, in this case here, we're going to start adding some rules. I only add a couple rules. I only need a couple for what we're going to do and what you would typically do. Now, the first thing I do, now you can go from most specific to least specific. You got to remember something. This is not an access list. It's one big file policy. Everything is looked at, right? It is not an access list. Now, we could do things like application protocol. Say, I want to look for example, you could do something HTTP download. Well, that's kind of restrictive. We could say we're going to block and come here to executables and go down here to torrent. We're going to say HTTP download torrent. This is a way to do that, right? But there might be something better than this anyways. And if you want to be specific and say that, that's fine, right? We could come here and I'll go ahead and do that just because we can, right? HTTP download, that's how most stuff's downloaded, isn't it? So, and then we were specific on BitTorrent stuff. Now, we could have done things like all executables, right? EXEs and the whatnot, right? Not just torrent. We could say no executables or no PDF type files, EPS PDFs, right? Or download, something like that. We can be specific. Some people, it's pretty rare today where someone say, I want to block all EXEs and all PDFs, right? I'm going to block those, put these in here, and now all PDFs and executables, any application, any direction are blocked. I don't see that too much today, mostly because we're so good at looking at them for malware now. So I'm just going to take that one out because I want them to come through so we can actually send malware to be blocked. Now, in this case here, let's talk about this. I usually do this at a company. I want to come in and they'll tell me, hey, yeah, we don't, have much stuff. We have these types of files. I'm like, let's take that. Let's take a look at that. So basically I'm going to do this. This causes zero overhead, what I'm about to do, because where this takes place, and it's just a passive file collection of the different types of files. So I'm going to click all these. Now, these last two, dynamic analysis capable, local malware, these are just, you click these because you don't know which one of these to click, and it picks them out of there and said, these are dynamic analysis or whatever. So I'm not going to pick these. It would just add already what's in there. I'm not going to store files that would add overhead here because I'm not blocking them. I just want to see what they have. For example, a lot of times maybe you say what kind of just multimedia they have, right? What kind of WAV files or, video files and stuff you see going on, right? So we're going to go ahead and save that. Oops, I meant to do that. Okay, good. And so I'm going to block torrent from being downloaded. That's fine. And then in this case here, I'm going to detect files. And I want to just know everything. It's very passive. No overhead really on that. Okay. Now the next thing, there's a couple other things I can do. I can certainly just block, as I was telling you. I can do kind of a IDS type malware. In other words, I would tell you you have malware, but not stop it. So that might be something that you want to do because you're testing to see what's going to be blocked. But in this case here, I just want to block it. And I want to block. So notice this is why we'll do executables and PDFs, because I'm going to check them for malware. Say all types now. Let's talk about some of these others up here. The first thing I want to do, though, is I want to send the files to the FMC if they have malware. So I want to store those. Why? Well, because I can either put them in my own sandbox, or I can send them by manually up to Talos for their sandbox, or I want to run it. I want to just store the files so I can do analysis on it. I think that's kind of good. Maybe you do that, maybe you don't. It's up to you. Now, the one thing I'm not going to do is these two here, because first off, clean is fine, but the unknown, most of them are going to come back unknown, and it's going to balloon up your storage, and it's just going to fill up your storage real fast. probably for no reason, probably for something you'd never use. Now, I need to tell you, I show people how to do this, and I show them their files and download. I say, go in here, and when we get to the network analysis section, I'll show you this, how to test them, how to open a sandbox, things like that. And, you know, they do that maybe for a week or two after I show them, and then that's it, right? They never go back out there. So maybe storing all these files isn't going to be much value for you. All right, now the one thing you want to do is turn on Spiro analysis for EXEs. This goes up to the AMP cloud, and it checks. It's kind of like a metadata on steroids, right, for the EXEs type of thing. So it's been around for a while. It's really fast. It's low overhead. It's an unlimited amount of files. There's no reason not to turn that on. Now, the next thing is dynamic analysis. There's a reason not to turn this on. So if I turn this on, what this says is I'm going to send the files, right? It's matched the policy. I'm going to actually build the file, calculate the SHA, send that up, and then I'm going to send the actual file to the vulnerability research team, now known as Talos. They'll open in a sandbox, and they'll give us a nice report back. We'll see that. Now, the problem with this is if you have an enterprise level agreement and you're a huge customer, then you can send up to 3,000 files per device to the Talos Cloud, 3,000 files per day to Talos Cloud. But for the rest of us that don't have unlimited kind of money to do stuff like that and buy that license, we only get 100 files a day, only 100. So in a lot of my customers, that would only be a couple minutes, if that long, maybe less, right? So maybe sending them up there is not very much value, because the capacity handling, if you highlight over this, is going to tell you, hey, after you send up your 100, I'll just store the next 100 for when your 24 hours expires and send that. Well, if you're sending, thousands of files an hour or something like that through your network, and maybe you're not, but if you are, this isn't much value for you. I'm going to show you how to do this by hand, because even if it comes back and then it has the file and it sends it to you, a lot of my customers don't go back out here and even look at them. So, getting malware, we're blocking it already. This might, we'll just do this by hand when we get to the network analysis. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. This looks good. So I'm going to detect files. I'm blocking BitTorrent in a certain direction. I typically would do this from like least specific to most specific. Some people do them from most specific to least specific. Doesn't necessarily matter, but in this case here, I didn't do it that way, did I? So we'll see that this still works. Now, we're also going to see that this doesn't really work, that Cisco has a BitTorrent issue. I wrote a blog about that on why. So maybe they'll get that fixed soon. But this is why also, if you guys remember, why I blocked that in my ACP. So if I come back here to my ACP, so here it is right here. I come back to my ACP. Remember, one of my first rules is stop torrent right here. And the way that I did it here is a peer-to-peer category, and blocked more than torrent, but this works. This absolutely works. So we could do this or the URL way. The file policy is needed. I put that in there because it used to work, and I'm sure they'll get it back working again. I'll just keep testing it until it starts working again. Anyways, I'm going to come down here now. Watch this. And I'm going to start adding this to all my rules that can do inspection, which would be all the allow rules. And we will come back to the IPS and put our own policies here. Not nearly as easy as the file policy. All right. Now let's just start at the top here where I'm monitoring. I have this marketing one. Absolutely. If you're going to send traffic out, I don't know why you would ever let it be uninspected. You don't need to do that. So now I have an IPS and file policy on there. And then this one here, the good URLs list here that I created, important. And we're going to let them go out to these sites, but we're still going to inspect it. And the other one we do is the interactive block for news, right? Who's to say they're going to a good location, right? And something couldn't get downloaded. So remember, this is a block, and you can only put it on an allow rule, but if they say okay, it becomes an allow rule, right? So I'll put that in there. That was pretty easy, right? There wasn't a lot to it. One of the things I want to do is to, detect the traffic, because that's the way you make your security policy. That's the way you can make your file policy, is based on the traffic. That's one of the first rules I put in. So we'll take a look and see what we get. Let's go ahead and save this and deploy it, and then we'll come back and test it. It's going to be fun. So I'll push this out on both. Now notice, because I'm starting the file policy, as part of the snort process, it has to restart snort. So it says it's going to inspect, the interruption is going to occur, right? So let me click on these and then say deploy. And then we'll wait a couple minutes, come back, and then we'll test it. And we're back. Let's check this out. Looking good, looking good. All health looks good. Deployment went well. And so let's go ahead now and run out, and we're going to do some network analysis now. So what we want to do is, now that I have all these file policies in there, let's run out to my inside host. Let's see which one I have here. Got some stuff running on here to try to get us some files. I'll let that run. Here's one of the things I want to download. I tested this while it was deploying. I went to ecar.org, and you go to the download page here. Now, it downloaded malware because I didn't have my file policy, but the Bitdefender, the thing on Windows, stopped it, right? And so it said, which is good, right? But in this case here, now if I try to download, now this is clear text files. Now we can see it found that right away, and it killed it, right? But if I watch this though, down here's SSL. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Okay, and watch this now. So we'll see it come in and download down here, and then we'll see some Windows Defender is gonna remove it. But we did not look at the file and decrypt it, right? We haven't done our SSL policy yet. So I'll go ahead and create a couple of those, and I'll go to my other inside host. This one's 19, that one was 20, and we'll see that this is now working as well where it didn't before. So I'll load that a couple times, and also let's try to get to BitTorrent. This is being denied by another rule. Let's go find out what's blocking BitTorrent, and it's going to be that peer-to-peer rule. But we could still see that. Now, actually, we won't, because if I come up here, I'm not logging this. So this is kind of an issue and kind of not. So in other words, that might be a lot of stuff. We may want to turn that on. So let me turn that on for now, so we can see that occur. And maybe you want to leave that one on. The one thing I wouldn't leave on is web advertisements in the DNS. That's just millions of events, so you don't need to see. This one we'll leave on, we'll save, and we'll deploy that, and then we'll check that later at another time. Let me go ahead and just push that out now for fun. Okay, now let's do some network analysis. Now, again, we'll go through this more in the network analysis section, spend more time on it. I'm just going to see that it worked and that we can view the events, and that we get events, actually. So we see right here, file block. And notice my host is showing that it has been, has an indication of compromise, right? Very interesting. All right, so we'll take a look at that later. Here's where we went, the URL. And if I go to table view, so we see that's pretty good. Nothing real fast here with network analysis, right? Real slow right there. Hang in there with me there. There's my file block. What I want to show you is over here. And we'll keep going, and we'll see the category, the URL, and actually the access control policy and the rule. And there's a file, because we told it to download files if we get the event, right? So this tells me I have a file event. I can click and go there from here. So we can take a look, but this tell me what rule. So it's that last rule. Notice this is why we name our rules so descriptively if we can. Inspect all traffic, log all. That's the one at the very end. It got all the way to the end. We were saying, hey, everything's permitted, go on out. Oh, but wait, we're going to inspect you, right? So we can see everything that's used. This way, this is so important to understand how we can find out where a rule was allowed or blocked. So the one last thing we'll look at here real quick, I'll go to malware events. I don't think we'll have any file events yet. It takes some time to build that. We can look, but it's unlikely something's there. And this is kind of a real slow network analysis. There it is right there. Let me open this in a new one, see if I have anything. But in this case here, we can see my malware, and this is the SHA. Right now, watch this. So I can say, oh, this came in with a disposition of malware, for sure. So if it came back unknown or clean or something, I could right click and notice I can add it to the clean list or add it to basically the Shaw blacklist, couldn't I? From here. This is what most of the stuff that we add for network analysis and we add into the blacklist is done from network analysis, isn't it? So if I was to put this in here and say, oh, you're bad, I'm going to add you to the custom list. Okay. So this is kind of new in the new code, right? This new thing, but it's telling us we have to redeploy our policies on this. All right, so this is a new screen that they just gave us, so I hadn't seen that one quite like that, but no big deal. I'll put that in and see it. So, I did get some files. So we could see that I've got mscab, ecr, reg, the type. We got an archive executable and some system files. These were we got quite a few actually files. So yeah, we did get a couple things, and we'll just keep some video running, and we'll end up with some more files. But let me run out to objects. If that's where I am, I'll just click it from here. That's the file policy itself. Come here to the file list, and we can see the entry right there. There it is right there. And then there it is right there, right? So that should have taken effect right away and give that disposition of malware. Now, so we can see we're not going to have any captured files yet, but we will go through this when we get to the network analysis section. So that's our file policy. Not real hard, not a ton to it like the IPS section. That's a big intense section, and the network analysis again we'll go over it, and that's a real great section, intense section as well.